So welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Your presence makes a difference. Please know that. So once again, I am Melissa, and I am the Spiritual Director, Senior Minister here at Rockland CSL. And so we are in February, Black History Month. We are celebrating love. We are celebrating life. February is like life month for me, because all the topics and all the sermons that we're talking about this every Sunday in February has to do with life, right? Because our theme for February is what? Life is calling. Life is calling. And so are you listening, right? We started off the month with listen to life, right? And how often do we listen to life? We listen to life every single day. And why do we do that? I love to quote Willis Kinnear from the 30-Day Mental Diet. We do that because life is so daily. Life is so daily. Every day, life is happening, right? And last Sunday, we talked about an undivided life, right? And I gave you some symptoms of what a divided life looks like and what an undivided life looks like. And I just want to remind you of Parker Palmer's point. He said, there comes a point in life when that divided life, that gap between who we really are and the face we put on for the larger world, becomes painful. So when we live that divided life, we're really living life half alive. And when we live an undivided life, we are living life fully alive. And then we had some fun with don't multitask, right? Don't multitask with God, and we're also not multitasking with our life. We have affirmed that we are monotaskers. We are monotaskers because we are wired that way. We are not wired to be multitaskers, and we're not wired to live more than one life at a time. And the life that we're living is what? The life that we're living is God's life through and individualized as each one of us. And so a couple of times I caught myself this week attempting to multitask. And then I couldn't remember what I was doing, right? Like nothing sunk in. And so I started affirming to myself, I am a monotasker. I am a monotasker. Do one thing at a time and do it well, and do it well. So today we are going to be talking about a radical forgiving life, a radical forgiving life. And since our theme is life is calling you, the question is life calling you to forgive? Is life calling you to forgive something, someone, even yourself, even yourself? And so I want to start, and many of you who know me for a while now are familiar with my forgiveness story. And I want to share just a little bit of it because I was in so much resistance to forgive. And all that I was doing by being in that resistance was delaying joy, true joy in my life. So see, this might not be your story, but see if you can relate to it in some way. If not now, maybe before. So my forgiveness story has to do with my father. And many of our forgiveness stories have to do with our parents. Possibly. Mine's my father. And so because I was in so much resistance to heal this relationship, I kept attracting relationships that were inviting me to heal that relationship, but I didn't want to see that. I don't even think I was aware of it at the time, right? And so it kept happening, right? Life kept calling me to heal this, right? It was like a telemarketer. Life was like a telemarketer inviting me to heal this, like calling me up and saying, let me talk to you about your car warranty, right? But instead it was saying, let me talk to you about your heart. Let me talk to you about your life, right? But I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. And so I found myself in a repeated story of unhealthy relationships with men, right? Unhealthy relationships with men, and not really understanding why this kept happening, right? Same story, different players, right? If anyone can relate to that, or maybe it's just me. So one day I was so heartbroken. I've broken up with someone I was engaged to get married to, and I broke off the engagement, and I was devastated by this. And I sat myself down and I just said to God, please help me. Help me to understand what is happening. What is happening? And immediately a memory came back to me of me being 5 years old, and I'm in the hallway of the building that we lived in, and I'm in my big wheel. I had a big wheel. I loved my big wheel, y'all. And I was just pedaling up and down the hallway. And at the end of the hallway would be my father, right? And he had his arms out, stretched towards me. And as soon as I got to him, he would turn the big wheel around and I would pedal the other way, and he would run down there and get there before me, be waiting for me. This memory, right, just came flooded in. And it was a happy memory, right? And I said, well, what does this have to do with this devastation that I feel right now? It had everything to do with it, because that was the last memory that I have of my father for a very long time. So I didn't grow up with my father. He was in and out of my house, in and out of my life. And up until the age of 5, he seemed to have been a constant in my life. But after that, it seemed as if he had disappeared. And the only thing that made sense to me that why he would disappear was it had to be me. There had to be something wrong with me. There had to be something about me that would keep him away. I must not be lovable. I must not be worthy of him being in my life. And I started that story, right? I wasn't conscious of it, right? But it was the seed of a limiting belief that was running my relationships. And I didn't know. I didn't have the awareness of it, right? And so many things happened that would bring this to the forefront for me. I found New Thought. I found this whole technology that I could change my life, that I'm co-creating my life, that nothing is happening to me, that things are happening for me, right? So I'm heartbroken, and yet I'm hearing messages saying, well, you have something to do with this heartbreak, right? And that's hard to take in. Like, I didn't do nothing, right? I didn't do nothing. But yeah. If I'm in it, then I have something to do with it too, right? And so I had to look at that. I had to look at the fact that life was mirroring back to me my limiting beliefs about myself, right? I had to take a really strong and hard look at that. And that required something that is deeper than just saying, I forgive you. It's deeper than just saying, I forgive you. It's deeper than just saying, I forgive myself. It took a radical forgiveness for me to move through and start to change my life. So let me step back and share some definitions, because I like to make sure we're all on the same page. So radical, right? Radical means going to the root or origin. And even the origins of the word radical is having roots, forming roots. And forgive is to grant pardon for or remission of an offense, a debt, etc., to absolve, right? And the origins of the word forgive is broken down into for and give, right? So what are we giving? When we talk about radical forgiveness, what we are giving is compassion. What we are giving is love, not just for the other person, but for ourselves also. And then what is the root? When we talk about radical, we're talking about the root, right? The root cause. I have cat hair all over me. It's kissing my eyes. We're looking at the root cause, right? And where's the root? Where does the root reside? The root resides in our subconscious mind, right? It is through the subconscious mind that we are connected with the universal mind. Our subconscious mind, that limiting belief that I was unworthy, that I was unlovable, was residing. It had residence in my subconscious mind, right? The seed of habit. And what was my habit? Getting into these relationships, right? Getting into these relationships for the purpose for me to heal, but not knowing that was the purpose, not knowing. So I had this habit, right? Embedded in my subconscious mind, but also in our subconscious mind is our principles, the universal principles, our aspirations, our imagination, our intuition. It's the seat of our soul. It's the seat of our soul. It's where we get to generate and co-create with the universal mind. So I came to recognize that the men in my relationship were men who I was attracting to me, right? Because they resonated with my core belief that I wasn't worthy of love, right? Who wants to hear that? When that came through, right? And I did some work, y'all. I did some work to come to that. I was like, wow, really? Okay. Let me just breathe that in, because what it really is an opportunity for me to use the universal power that's invested in me to reveal the healing that is seeking to come through me and as me. Yes, that is seeking to come through me and as me. But I had to listen. I had to listen to what life was calling me to do. And I'm just going to take a pause because, Jim, because you're not muted, the camera keeps going back and forth between the two of us. So if you could just mute yourself, Jim, that would be great. Thank you. So because I wasn't listening, I was delaying the healing, and I was just repeating and recreating the pain, right? And so we have to go beneath the surface of what seems to be happening, right? Because y'all know what happens. We're in relationships, they don't go well. We start talking to our girlfriends. They become our amen corner about what he did and he ain't right and all that stuff, right? But we have to go beneath that, right? That's just noise. That's just distraction, right? When we go to the root, we discover something else much more meaningful is going on. There's this dynamic book called Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tippin. Did I bring it down here? Yes. By Colin Tippin. If you are dealing with something in your life that you've been holding on to, that you, for whatever reason, are having difficulty letting go, releasing, forgiving, I highly recommend Radical Forgiveness. Colin Tippin writes, just being willing to entertain the idea that something else is going on is a giant step forward. In fact, the willingness to see the situation differently is the key to your healing. 90% of the healing occurs when you become willing to let in the idea that your soul has lovingly created the situation for you. In becoming willing, you let go of control and surrender it to God. And God takes care of the other 10%. Do you ever say, I could never forgive someone for doing what they did? I could never forgive him for breaking my heart. That was my original statement. I could never forgive him. I could never forgive my father for disappearing. I could never forgive him for leaving me. I said that. I could never. And guess what? I didn't have to. I didn't have to do that by myself. Because the presence that is always present is with me, is the power that I can use to forgive, right? The power within me does the work. Not me. I'm just willing. I'm just willing to be used to forgive. I'm a willing vessel for forgiveness. But I don't have to do the heavy lifting all by myself, because God and I are one. God and I are one. I love in the Bible, John 14:10. It says this, and I'm giving you the Red Melissa version. You know how there's the King James version? Well, this is the Red Melissa version. Do you not believe that God and I are one? This is John 14:10, Red Melissa's version. Do you not believe that God and I are one? I am oneness, and oneness is in me, within me. The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the I am that dwelleth in me. They doeth the work. God does the work. Divine does the work through me and as me. And so then I'm like the meditation that Michelle said, then I could smile because I know that I'm not in this all by myself, right? I'm not struggling to figure it out. I am open and willing and ready and receptive. I am a vessel, right? For the work that needs to be done, right? For the descent of the universal mind into my soul so that I can co-create a life of love, of healthy love in my relationships, right? So when we remember that we're never alone in our trials and tribulations, when we become willing to see the situation differently, that willingness, y'all, shifts everything. Shifts everything. You don't have to be in 100% forgiveness. You don't. Just have a little willingness, right? Knowing that you are doing this with the indwelling spirit, right? And because of that, the root, right? That radicalness of forgiveness changed. It started to shift. It started to reveal itself for the truth of who I am, right? I started to believe, wait a minute. Let me look at this. I am worthy. And guess what? So is my Father. So is my Father worthy of love from me. Why am I withholding? I don't know the whole story of his life. And I will tell you this, the one thing that you don't want to trust are memories. Because what I come to find out is that my memory was not accurate. He would come around, but I have no memory of it because I was so attached to the story that I had repressed those memories. completely. So in my mind, I had not seen my father from the age of 5 till my early 20s. Come to find out, he was around, not often, but he was. But he was. But it didn't fit into my story. The subconscious mind is strong, y'all. It is strong, right? So because I had this willingness, because I was willing to bring my life together, because I no longer wanted to live a life that was divided against myself, right? I wanted to live a life that was united in the truth of who and whose I am, because we're not wired that way. We're not wired for a divided life. We're not wired to think that we're not worthy of love. We were not created that way. But we come into this form and we have these experiences that I truly believe our souls agreed to before we came into this physical form. And then we forget. We forget our agreements, right? And we start to live from a place of, in my case, unworthiness. I want to share something else from the book, Radical Forgiveness. Colin Tippin says that radical forgiveness challenges us to radically shift our perception of the world and our interpretation of what happens to us in our lives. Talk about a shift in perspective and perception about my father. I reached out to him. And for him, he was happy. And I was like, wait a minute, why are you so happy? Why? He wasn't suffering like I was, right? We often want the people that we have not been able to forgive yet, we want to believe that they're suffering, right? Guess what, beloveds? They're not suffering. They don't know what's going on with you, right? And whatever is going on with you, they think it has nothing to do with them, right? And so I spoke to him and I shared with him how I was feeling all these years. And you know what he said? He said, I always loved you, baby. I always loved you. But there were other dynamics that a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 15-year-old would not understand, right? So I don't have the whole picture. None of us do. None of us have the whole picture about anybody else's life, not even our own children, right? But we could stand in the gap of the missing pieces that we have no ideas about. And we stand in that gap with love and with God. And so I told my father, we had spoken on the phone a couple of times, and I was approaching 30. And I said to him, you know what I want to do for my 30th birthday? I want to go out to dinner with you. And he said, sure, baby. We went out to dinner and we sat in the restaurant. And he said to me, you can ask me anything you want. And so I asked him about these memories that I had. And he cleared it up for me. And we sat there just holding hands. And I remember him saying to me, you know, these people in this restaurant think you my girlfriend, right? I'm robbing the cradle, right? And I said, I don't care what they think. I'm just happy to be here with you. And it shifted everything. It took commitment. This did not happen overnight, right? It took a willingness to be radical with myself, to get to that core belief, to go to the root of it all, to not get distracted by this guy or this guy and what he did and what he didn't do. No. And when we really can embrace radical forgiveness, guess what, y'all? What we could say, what I could say to those relationships now is thank you. Thank you. Because it was a soul to soul connection, right? It was a soul to soul connection for my healing and maybe for their healing too. I don't know. That's radical. Now, being heartbroken, thank you was the last thing on my mind, right? But in retrospect, I can see and receive the gift of it because I learned so much. I learned so much about myself and about my own worthiness. And it healed a core relationship. It healed a core relationship. Now, let me say this. Some of us have core relationships that we need to heal, but we don't necessarily need to make that reconnection for whatever reason. And that's fine. It doesn't negate the possibility, the opportunity for you to free yourself by healing that. Because again, it is the indwelling spirit within you that is doing the work as you. You're not alone. You're not alone. I love how Ernest Holmes talks about forgiveness. He calls it divine forgiveness. And he references the book of Matthew, where Peter asks Jesus, how often shall he forgive his brother? 7 times, Peter said. And Jesus told him, no, not 7. We should forgive until 70 times 7. Well, y'all, I did the math on that, and that's 490 times, right? But that represents that forgiveness is eternal. It's ever available, right? Ernest said the eternal mind holds nothing against anyone. Holds nothing against anyone. So we are living the life of God, then we are holding nothing against ourselves. We are holding nothing against others, and we can give compassion for the things that we do not understand because we do not have the full story, right? So I could see the divine reality of my father with a capital R. And I could love him, right? Because I could see it from God's perspective, more than my own, right? And I could remember that possibly, and I fully believe that this was soul's agreements with another soul's agreement. And I got to participate in my healing. And I got to have a testimony that I hope connects with someone somewhere that might be living a life that is half full, that is half alive, because you refuse to forgive. The fact that the most radical part of radical forgiveness is really that there's nothing to forgive, means that we can be in gratitude all the time, all the time. And that right there, being in gratitude all the time, is a radical, radical act. It's a radical act. But again, when we're going through it, y'all, it's hard to see it from that higher perspective. So we take a pause, we go within, we make that soul connection with the universal mind, and we just avail ourselves to that next thing that we need to do so that we can free ourselves and so that we can know the truth and the wholeness of who we are again and again. So in closing, let's remember these things about radical forgiveness, because we're still in our remembering quadrant. And I'm keeping a whole list, y'all, from the beginning of the year of all the things we are remembering, okay? Remember that we are going beneath the surface. The appearance is not the cause. Appearance is not cause. When we go to the root, we go to the cause. And it is at the cause, at the level of the cause, that we make, that healing happens, that we are able to forgive. So let's get to the root. Remember, get to the root. Forgiveness moves stagnation. So if you are experiencing the same things over and over and over again, if you're telling the same stories over and over and over again, your life is stagnant. Forgiveness moves stagnation. Start with compassion. Just start there, having compassion for yourself and having compassion for others. If you want to be enlightened, right? We all say we want to be enlightened and woke and all that good stuff. Then you have to forgive. You think Jesus held a grudge against Judas? No. So we have to forgive 70 times 7, right? Take a consciousness check. Take a consciousness check. Am I seeing this at the level of victim, or am I seeing it at the level of being a vessel, right? Is this happening to me, or is this happening for me? Take a consciousness check, like you would your temperature if you weren't feeling well, right? Something happens, you're not feeling well about it, take a consciousness check. How am I seeing this? And remember that freedom is in forgiveness. Free yourself. Free yourself by freeing others. And lastly, say thank you. At any point in time that you can, say thank you. Because the energy of gratitude is a healing elixir. It's a healing elixir. So let's live a life that is radical, y'all. Radical love, radical forgiveness. They go hand in hand, hand in hand. Okay. So I came upon a poem that I wanted to share. And then I got confirmation that I should share it because it was the closing poem that Bob Roth did yesterday in a group TM. So I said, okay, what are the chances that I was thinking about sharing this poem and then Bob Roth is saying the same poem last night? So please take this in as our spiritual